So the next thing we're going to discuss is called Jun Ma or Jun Ma Kuen. Jun Ma means turning, Ma means stance, Jun means turning, Kuen, fist or punch. So the Jun Ma Kuen, the turning punch. The reason why we do the Jun Ma early on in our training is A, because you can do it almost effectively from a basic stance just by neutralising the stance a little bit, and then you've already got your feet positions. And B, because we don't want to teach stepping and moving too early. Everybody knows in martial arts that power comes from the stance. So the more, and they also know that the best block in the world is to move. The problem that we have is that a lot of people seem to, because best block in the world is to move, then as soon as somebody comes in, even in the classroom training, they'll have you step out of the way for greater power, step out of the way for greater avoidance, etc. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And we all know that to make the punch the most powerful it can be, it's got to be a whole body experience. So when we train in our basic stance of punching, we're only really educating our legs whilst training our muscle groups for punching, but we're not actually learning to deploy a technique. We're just doing the mechanics set. When we're applying it, because of the force equals mass times acceleration, you're going to find that we're going to use the whole body and put the whole body behind it. The problem is that a lot of people, if they're not careful, because they use those principles of use the whole body for the punch, best block in the world is to move, what happens is that as soon as somebody comes in, they train from day one, moving out of the way or moving in. The disadvantage to that is you become reliant upon the ability to step and use space outside the space you currently occupy. Now, if you're in a crowd in a place and you have become reliant upon using body stance, body movement, stepping out the way for the power and the avoidance, and that's not available to you, what are you going to do? You're going to panic. So what we do is we start off with the turning stance. And the reason for doing the turning stance is you basically learn to reposition your body, but you don't ever step sideways, backwards or forwards. You're working within the space you currently occupy. So from here, if Alan just does a turn for me, just twists and shifts, all he's effectively done, if you go back to neutral stance, is moved his centre line, which if I'm going to punch him in the face, that's effectively where I'm going to be aiming. As he shifts his body across, you'll find now the centre line is now over here. So he's moved away, not a great deal, but a little bit, but he's moved away enough that the punch would miss and he's at an alternative angle. He's taken an alternative angle of attack back. He's given himself some body cover, but he's shifted out of the way. The one thing, if he turns to the other side, but the one thing he hasn't done is bumped into somebody who may be over here or maybe over here, because you're still moving within the space you currently occupy. The turning stance is applied by using the centre of the heels. And the reason you use the centre of the heels, if you just turn and face me. Okay? Yeah. The reason why we use the centre of the heels is your body mass, upper body mass, splits itself across the hip girdle, drives itself down, although it physically goes down the bones, but the first point of contact of your body mass is the centre of your heels here. This centre of the heels, that circle placed on the floor is where your body mass is focused. You can lift your toes, you can't lift your heels if you press it down properly. So pivoting around the toes is great for dancing, but it's not great for Wing Chun. Pivoting around the heels means that you are neither moving forward, backwards, side to side, so you're basically in the same point of space on the floor, albeit rotational. So if you now turn from here, so what we do, pivot on the heels, we shift the hips across. Now, a lot of people will quote 45 degrees. The reason why they quote 45 degrees is halfway between straight forward and sideways. By turning the hips at 45 degrees, approximately, it means you can cover from here, and without moving the body at all, you can cover a full 90-degree angle. Very, very simple. So, by turning 45 degrees, you just put your arms out of the way. You go square. If you were square on and you got hit, you absorb all of the force. By turning 45 degrees, it becomes a glancing blow. It lessens the force. Not only is he turning 45 degrees, however, he's also sitting back on the back leg. So now, that punch that was coming in this direction is now missing, or at least glancing onto the shoulder. Here, I'll do it with this hand, I'm going to put myself at full extension. Here he can hardly reach me. Okay? If you turn, and now put the hand out, you can see it increases his range. So it increases his range, which means as he's turning and putting the hip in for power, he's increasing his power and driving forward and is increasing in range. So when you apply it at this range, you can imagine it's quite powerful. It's very, very short, sharp power. It's got a lot of lifting energy, and it's going to do the job it's supposed to do. And if you just relax for a second. As I turn from here, what it allows me to do, as I say, is cover the 190-degree arc, and a simple turn to here will allow me to cover another arc. Often I see people when they're training, sparring, or whatever they want to call it, they often put their legs forward, and they have a leg lead, and they have a fist forward. And it's perfectly understandable why anybody would do that. You put your leg forward because it gives body cover. You angle your hips because it turns away and presents a narrower target, and also protects the centre line, because getting hit here hurts, getting hit here can be a lot more permanent. And so a lot of people stand sideways. There are great advantages to it, but there are disadvantages to it. My opponent's in front of me, and they go that way, it's brilliant. But if my opponent goes that way and steps this way, turning and covering that in an emergency is very difficult. Okay? And I've had people come down and go, oh yeah, but I would, really? I don't think so. By standing facing your opponent, obviously you present a very vulnerable target. That's not a good idea. But by turning, you present a strong part of the body, ribs, shoulders, quads, all the way down. You angle the hips, you present a shallower target, and I can cover my angle here. But because my feet are in line this way, a simple turn to here, and I can now cover the 180. So whichever way my opponent covers, I can cover it. I can cover that arc as opposed to that arc. If your leg is forward, I'll get you to face me. Hands up. I'll stand aside of the camera. If you have this leg lead here, one of the disadvantages is it can be used against you very easily. Where if you're in a turn stance, that's not applicable. It can't be used in the same way. So there are advantages to standing this way, but sometimes the disadvantage outweighs. There are advantages to standing this way. There are always disadvantages. You know, my feet are parallel, and if force gets applied, I've got to have a much stronger structure, or I may have to drop back. If I'm here and something moves away, I'll step forward. But predominantly turning, A, is safer because it covers the 180. B, it gives all the same advantages as the leg lead. Here, hips 45, strong part of the body presented. Here, hips 45, strong part of the body presented, but with the 180 coverage as a benefit. The other thing that you want to try and think about when you're doing the stance here is how you then move forward. If I'm here, to step through with the power, people have to expose themselves. From here, I actually step and put my leg in the way as I drive forward. So it gives me the ability to change line. If something's coming in this direction, I can actually use the step to cut them off, etc., etc. When I'm doing the turning stance to here, the benefit of turning at 45 degrees is not only can this punch come forward and drive, because I haven't overturned, whatever hand technique I choose to use here can still be applied. I'm not turning too much and losing the ability to use my rear hand, if you want to call it that. So the Jun Ma is a very simple exercise. As I say, it's done pivoting on the heels. We can do it with punches or other hand techniques. I'm just facing here and go through the turning stance for me. As you turn, what we're looking to do is to face the quadriceps here towards the opponent. If the quadriceps towards the opponent, then this stance becomes really powerful. If I just stand here to the side of their press, that's really powerful. The problem you have is if you overcommit it and you turn that knee just that little bit too much, it starts to become quite weak, and you can see it start to wobble, and a little bit of pressure there and it can fall over. So understanding where the quadriceps are, how you align your muscle groups, how you use your body to the greatest efficiency is part of training the turning stance. When we turn, we're pushing forward with the hip, we're pulling with the adductors, we're rotating the knee across to give body cover, and we're sitting our weight across. So we're not staying static in the centre. So as you turn, you then come on an alternative angle. The Jun Ma is a very simple discipline. It's a very simple drill, but it's something you've got to work to become powerful and structured. And in fact, it's probably one of the most complex, basic techniques you will learn. Because if you're not careful, you end up moving like you're dancing, hopping around, straightening the leg, sticking the hips back. There's lots of little things in the body mechanics that you need to work on to try to help you understand the mechanic. So the first thing is, if you go back to a basic stance, you open the Jun Ma. The first thing you need to know is if you're going to turn from the Jun Ma, you can't. It's not designed as an application stance. So if you're drilling turning punch, the first punch you do, you're going to have to reposition the feet. So as you turn, one way or another, you've got to get yourself. That first punch will always be weak if you're drilling, because you would never apply it from a Jun Ma in a street. You wouldn't walk around like this, you'd be an idiot. You would here and you just apply it naturally. The front leg has to be slightly bent. If it's locked out, it's going to get bust and kicked on, so it has to be slightly bent. I want to see from the front that the quadriceps covering as much of the centre line as possible. This punch is going to the old centre line. The old centre line, as you go into a neutral stance, was here, and when you now turn, is here. So that punch lines up with the fist through the shoulder. If that punch is going to the centre line that you moved away from, the line of attack we're referencing when we have no opponent, then it will line through to the end of the clavicle. Therefore, there's no reason why you can't put this fist and this elbow in line. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 joints, all in line, so that when you then turn and punch with this arm, it's like a piston drive, driving it forward, and out it comes. And the same thing applies on the other side. What is very common, and as a mistake in training, is people punch in front of their nose. To do that, therefore, this punch comes over here. This, therefore, has got very little structure forward because it's across your body, and this is aiming to a centre line that's not the one you should be playing. Okay? Because it's like punching out here, and then the next punch is a bit like punching out here, because every time you turn, if you let that centre line move, the reality is you want to be able to the apex of the triangle all of the time, which in this case is here. So to train, it's well worth having a reference line. So you go to your neutral stance.
You neutral from here?
Yeah. It's well worth having a reference line, so when you turn and punch, you aim to it, and you aim to it, and you aim to it, and you aim to it, every single time without fail. You go to the same point in space, whether you're doing turning punch, turning tarn punch, if you're doing turning bonks out, turning jumps out, turning packs out, same thing, always aim to the same point. And the reason for that is A, accuracy. You know, you can't beat accuracy and precision. That's the skill of martial art, is to learn for you to be in control of you. So the accuracy and precision is really important. Don't worry about power, don't worry about developing great speed and power in the early stages. If your mechanics are right, you can increase speed and you can increase power. If your mechanics are weak, increasing speed and power will just cause more problems. It will just exaggerate the mistake and the weakness. So the Jun Ma very simple. Keys to look for when I'm teaching it is make sure people A, open a proper width stance first. They don't just guess it because they've forgotten that Jun Ma is the mother of all stances. Get them to naturalise it by turning the toes out a little bit more, so it's more natural now. Make sure they're pivoting on the centre of the heel, and in their mind they've got a point to aim for, whether I stand them in front of a line drawn on the wall, whether I hang a piece of string with a tennis ball down for them to aim towards, whether I use a person with a finger or a focus mitt, or somebody put their palm on. It doesn't matter what it is, but they need a reference line. Otherwise, when they're training, they feel like they're punching across, when in reality, of course, it's them that's moving out of the way. But they don't feel that because they've got no reference. So give them a reference line. Make sure that the hand covers the centre line that was. Make sure the hips are about 45 degrees and the weight is across. Some people want to put percentage on the weight. I've heard people say that the body mass should be 90% on the rear leg, 10% on the front, 100% 0, 70-30. I have no idea how you measure that as an active exercise. So rather than plucking percentages out of the air, just put the majority of the weight on the rear leg. If you can put all the weight on the rear leg when you're training at home, that will just take the 50-50 weight distribution you practiced in the Jun Ma and get you putting 100% of the weight on one leg for a while. And the benefit of putting 100% of the weight on one leg is when later on you want to learn to kick, you've already learned to support your body mass with 100%. But don't worry about that. In application, it's going to vary, but the majority of the weight is on the rear leg. So when you turn, the reason for that is that when force is applied here, like you've hit something, it will then dissipate the force down. It's looking for support here. It's no good having the weight over on the front leg. You put the weight on the front leg, the force is applied here, it's not going to find any support mechanism. So we need to make sure that we've got that support mechanism from the stance. So the Jun Ma, very simple, pivot on the heels, hips approximately 45 degrees. The majority of the weight on the rear leg, 100% if you can, but certainly the majority of the weight on the rear leg, and don't neglect the rear guard hand. Okay? Train in front of a mirror, train in front of draw a line on it, train in front of a door frame, using the edge of a door frame as a reference, whatever it is that you can line up with, so you can see exactly where you're punching to, so as you start increasing power, if it starts getting a little bit wayward, you can correct it very simply. But that's the Jun Ma concept. The beautiful thing, if I can just move you across just a little bit for a second, the beautiful thing about the Jun Ma is that once you've learned to do Jun Ma, and you've turned, and you're here, this is the only stance you will ever need. I don't know if you can see in the camera, but I'm going to use this cross-reference here. Imagine a 45-degree diagonal. If I stood over the centre of the cross here, and something's coming towards me and I've got nowhere to move out of the way, I would use the Jun Ma. I would turn to one side, or I would turn to the other. I could, if I've got a little bit more space, however, step. But when I step into exactly the same structure called Hao Ma, the rear leg weight stance. Okay? And of course, if I can do it to this side, I guarantee I can do it to that side. Something's coming steaming in towards me, what I may need to do is step back a fraction, just to give myself a little bit of range and distancing. But that stance I step into is exactly the same stance as Jun Ma. There's the neutral, there's the turning. And if I can go that way, I guarantee you I can go that way. Something's coming towards me, I want to slip past it to cause it some problems, I'm going to drive forward this way, I'm going to step Jun Ma forward. As I step Jun Ma forward, the stance that I step into is exactly the same stance as Jun Ma. Go back to my neutral stance, I think it was here. Okay? If something's coming towards me, I'll give them a little bit of a dig, but that hasn't knocked them down, anything, they step back to recover it, I'm going to step forward straight away. I'm going to Jun Ma and I'm going to keep the distance and I'm going to close them down. That stance that I step into is Jun Ma. Jun Ma comes from the Jun Ma turning stance. The weight on the rear leg, hips at an angle, etc., etc. So whether I go forward, sideways, sideways, diagonally forward, diagonally back, or side step, I'm using exactly the same weight distribution and body posture I am here. You'll notice I've not mentioned one, stepping straight back. Never say never. You may have to step back, but you really don't want to do it unless it's last resort. Because something's coming steaming towards you to cause you a lot of pain and damage. Stepping back just saves you getting hurt for a fraction of a second. If I'm stood on a railway track and the train's coming, that's not going to save my life. That's not avoidance, that's just avoiding it for a few seconds later. So Wing Chun rarely ever steps back. Why would you? Something's coming at you, why would you step back in a straight line? But never say never, because there's going to be that one scenario where it's the only thing you can do. But no matter which stance you use, this position here and the Jun Ma turning into it, you can turn into it, you can step into it, doesn't matter how you do it, but this stance here is the only stance in Wing Chun that you ever really need. And it's most natural, because here I am, I'm doing it, somebody comes in, bang, foot, fight back, somebody comes in, boom, foot, fight forward, step back a little bit. It becomes, as you become comfortable with it, a lot more natural. Don't keep your forms rigid. Don't keep your mechanics rigid. If you practice turning Jun Ma like this, and you think you've learned how to fight because you can do that, you're wrong. It has to be natural, it has to be simple, it has to be effective. It can't be overly rigid. Somebody comes in with a punch, I can't be sitting looking like a kung fu movie. Somebody comes in with a punch, I need to be able to actually move myself naturally. It has to be very simple. And it has to be the most flexible thing I've got, so I can work it. It can't be rigid. So don't start training it all of the time like you've just dropped out of a kung fu film. Take the mechanics that you learn, personalise them, naturalise them, make them flow, make them work for you, and then you become the king of Wing Chun. It's your tool. It's the thing that you need to make work for you. It's not going to dictate to you how it should use. Wing Chun has principles and it has concepts that surround it, but they give you a lot of leeway of how to apply it. How you apply it's always got to be you. So turn the principle into your reality, and you can't go far wrong.